Let's take a look at what we did last time. You can see we have our game set up where we shoot our ping pong balls at these different rates. If I want to run over to them and I'm running too slowly, I can hold shift and my character sprints. Something else that would be cool is if we added a zoom down our gun. So let's go ahead and do that in our blueprints. So let's go ahead and go to our first person character blueprint. Let's go down by our mouse input node since we're going to be using that for our zoom. So let's right click out here and look for input, and the action we're looking for is the zoom. Let's make sure I spelled that right. There we go. Input action zoom. And what we're going to look for is let's right click and look for our first person camera. And there it is. Let's move these over a little bit. And what I'm going to look for is a set field of view node. And that'll give us our camera too, because we got toggle active. So what that's going to do, oops, we don't want that. Let's delete this. So we have our first person camera here, and this is our field of view. So when we're pressing on our key press, we want to set the field of view. So let's type in 45 here. Because what happens is, if you lower the field of view, if you're used to doing this in Unity, it gives you this effect of zooming into like a narrow area. Alright, so let's compile and save. And now when we jump back into our example, when I press play, I right click, it should snap to a zoom. The only problem is now when I right click again, it doesn't return. And also that was a little jarring that it just sort of snapped to that view. You see that when I just pops to it? So let's get a little transition going. So let's jump back in our first person view. And what we're going to want to do is do sort of an animation. So in our input action zoom, what we want to do is we're going to drag out a new wire called pressed. So hold Alt and just click on this to break this connection. And what we're going to do is just drag out an executable action. And what I want to look for is add timeline, like this. And this is going to give us an animation timeline. Oops. Alright, there we go. And because this is going to it'll get a little confusing soon, let's go ahead and highlight all of this and hit C, and then we're going to make sure that we comment this out that this is our zoom nodes. Let's bring this down a little bit. Now if you come from an animation background, something you might find interesting is whenever you want to adjust the timeline node, you double click it, and then for example, say we want to add a float, it's going to give us this curve, or we can create a Bezier curve, so it's this external curve that allows us to control the way the animation moves. So let's name our track here field of view, our float track, so field of view. Now what we have to do is we have to set a key here. So I held shift and I left clicked, and that created a key here. And in order to do it over a certain period of time, so you can see here's 50, I can hold shift again and click down here, and you can see now we have we've set a second key. Think of a key as sort of like in a film, you're locking in you're animating over a period of time. So this is like 50 over 1 second, or 50 frames. So let's go ahead and click this top here, and we want to make sure that it starts directly at 0.0, and we type a value of 90. So we want the zoom animation to be pretty quick as well. So at the top of the editor, let's find the length and change it to 0.3. Let's move this guy over here. And we're going to set this one to 0.3 as well. So it's at the end of our graph. And our value is going to be 45. So mine kind of flipped out here. So what I'm gonna do is, notice that these values are in 0.5. If I take this up, so here's my value here, and I make this 0.9. There we go. And then we make this 0.0. Maybe your values didn't kind of freak out on you. Mine seemed to do it. So here's 0.3 again, and then if I bring this to maybe 0.45, there we go. We get more of our arc that we're looking for here. So you might have to kind of play with it depending on how it off-puts. Alright, so let's close this out and now go back to our event graph. We want to hook this all up. So for our field of view here, we're going to connect these two. So here's our field of view here. So we're setting those two. And then where it says released, we're going to reverse back. So as we release off of that mouse, I'm going to bring this down here. Actually, let's just bring all of this over in here. I'll shift select this guy. Alright, now let's link our update node to set field of view. Alright, let's go ahead and compile and save. Actually, what I'd like you to do is if you select this first node, I believe my initial values are right. So 0.0 for this and a value of 90. So it's at a direct 90-degree angle. And then when we select this one down here, we're going to go to 0.3 and then set this to 45. And then save this, compile it, save again. And now when we jump back in and you press play, you can hold down the right mouse button and it allows you to zoom and then you could fire. So that is the end of this Zoom video, and our event graph should look like this. And make sure to go back into the timeline editor and make sure that these are your initial values, 0 and then a 45-degree angle. And remember to save it.